I'll call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I'd like to remind our guests this is a committee meeting. The meeting is designed for the board to gather and discuss information that's important to the operation of the school system. Some information discussion will be precursor to policy, budgetary, operational concerns that require board action at the more formal Board of Education meeting on the second Monday of each month. By nature, this last formal meeting may result in brainstorming and more open conversation than the formal BOE. Please do not take our wishes, wants, and comments as board action. We do not allow public comment at this meeting. At that time, we'll call this meeting to order, and we will move. Mr. Johnson, do you have any changes to the agenda?
Not for the CAL. We do for the regular.
Okay, we'll handle that at that time. Do any board members, do you have any changes for the CAL meeting agenda? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the Committee of the Whole agenda.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. The agenda has been approved. At this time, Dr. Hussain doing personnel report.
I'll stand in for Dr. Hussain. She's at a meeting on the southern end of the county and driving back. Board members, you have your personnel report for the month of January there in front of you. I think it's pretty well self-explanatory, but I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Board members, any questions, comments about the personnel report? We'll see an updated one, I'm sure, in the Board of Education meeting. If not, we'll move on. Now we move into the fun and games. I was hoping that our other board members would be here. There's a rumor that we're getting lake effect snow on Brawley School Road, but I don't believe that's true. So here comes Mr. Gay, and we'll go ahead and get started. Dr. Taylor and
Mr.
Dr.
Page,
Blattner. Yes.
You guys have got some revised, a PowerPoint revised at your seat for your device discussion for now and at your board meeting.
Yes, thanks, Kelly. I was going to mention that. Friday morning, I talked to Mr. Page, and he asked for some additional information on comparisons of the existing lease cost for elementary, secondary, and the technology for the elementary teacher purchase. He wanted those broken down so we could kind of see some comparisons. So I did send that to you Friday afternoon, and then we updated the PowerPoint, and then I also put a large print copy there of that one slide that was updated. That would be slide 27 in the presentation.
Thank you for that. Before we get started, I would like to see if Mr. Kelly has any. Mr. Kelly and Mr. James were on the committee, and before we start, do you have any comments, Mr. Kelly? Threw you right out there, didn't I, buddy? I just wondered if
That's right.
And that's the second? You want a second? That was your second?
I just wondered if there was anything you wanted to say.
No, I can't say anything at this point except everything positive. I think if you look through the PowerPoint that's coming out, they have done an excellent job on this committee. They had some really good people on the committee. They worked long and hard. A lot of those are here, I think. And they worked long and hard and from way back when, and checked out and answered every question there was to be asked, including questions and answers that didn't even need to be asked and answered. And they did very well. And if you follow through this, I think it's been done very well, and it's very clear, and I think we're on the right track.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we want to start off tonight by just going over kind of a brief overview of what we're going to be presenting. We want to talk a little bit about the process that we used to arrive at the recommendation that the task force came up with. We've got quite a few of our task force members here this evening. Some of them are going to be speaking to you, so just for time, I'll ask those folks if they'll just kind of stand up there. I think it's pretty much just about everyone in our audience to be recognized for their time and efforts throughout this process. We started this last spring, and a lot of these folks hung in there with us for all of the meetings throughout. Several of you are going to be speaking later on, so maybe just to save time, if you guys could come up and maybe just sit right here on the front row, so as it's your turn to speak, then we can save time with some of that. And please feel free to ask any of our participants any questions that you may have along the way. We want to talk a little bit about the pilot process and how we gathered that process and used all of that information throughout for the task force recommendation. Just a reminder that throughout this process, the board has received several updates via email, and you also have a link to a folder that was provided in your board packet, and that folder has all of the supporting documents and the raw data that was used throughout this process and that the task force utilized in their decision. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to Dr. Blattner.
Thank you. The process that we went through, we started with a cross-functional team, which included two board members, Mr. James and Mr. Kelly. And with that, we did surveys of all the PLCs throughout the school to find out how teachers wanted to use the devices that we were going to look at using. We determined the devices that we were going to use in the pilot based upon all that information. We conducted the pilot, which took 6 weeks, and during that time we also heard presentations from our vendors about what other services and what other products will be along with what we are purchasing. This team reviewed all that data, crunched all those numbers, and we'll go through that, and then they came to the recommendation that we have for you today. The task force, like I said, consisted of 2 board members, 3 central support services, 3 principals, 9 teachers, 5 from elementary. You could read that. We had a lot of there. The names of those who are actually on the committee are in your board packet. I did not just include them here, but we had instructional, we had back-end support, we had leadership. We tried to represent everywhere we could for this task force. You can see all these meetings. Each one of those meetings is at least 2 hours. Mr. Kelly can attest to that. And we were pushing, trying to get it done in that point in time. I really do commend everyone that is here and everyone that's on that committee for the time and effort they put in there, because no one shirked their responsibility. Everyone did what they needed to do. It's over 24 hours of work that you see right here on the board that they took place in. And I'm glad we were able to recognize them for the time that they took here. The PLCs, again, we asked them, what do you want to do with this technology? What do you want to do as a teacher? What do you want to do as a student, or your students to be able to do? Well, because we want our device to fit that. We don't want to put a device in front of them and ask them to use it in different ways. We want to find out how do they want to use it. The initial intent was that each PLC would do this and then report back for 1 per PLC. We had it to where we had people that wanted to make sure their voices were in there. We had over 300 responses. We have more than 300. We have less than 300 PLCs. It was just a great wealth of information. It meant a lot that this group had to go through and disaggregate, but they did a great job in doing that. From that, we came to these devices. There's the MacBook Air, 11-inch. There's an iPad. Now, one thing that came up in this is that the iPad, some wanted to have a keyboard with that. So in the pilot, we chose to have keyboards in the 3 through, the pilot we did iPads all the way through 8th grade. So they had keyboards all the way through that. K2 did not have a keyboard. They felt that the keyboard was not necessary in that. We used the Lenovo Chromebook and the Lenovo ThinkPad, the 11E Yoga. These devices fit all the requirements that they were saying that teachers wanted to use devices for. They seemed to meet everything that they're. We were really looking at Windows versus Mac. When you look at a Windows device, it's a software. The hardware is important, but it's going to be similar on no matter what kind of Windows device you have. The Windows devices are somewhat similar. So we looked at making sure we used Lenovo, who we have a long-standing relationship with, going back way before I was tech director. They have quality products. and they're also on the state contract for Windows devices, so we chose them. I also want to, I don't know if any of them are in the audience right now, this is a big ask for a vendor. We asked them to provide over 140 devices on the idea that you might get a contract. And they provided training and devices and some support to make it so our team could make and our school district could make the best decision. So it took making sure we had good relationships with these partners to make sure that they were there with us along the way. This is the technical gobbledygook. I have it in there for you so you can compare it. If you have questions on it, I'll answer that. But I don't think I really need to spend a lot of time going over that, except that this meets the requirements that we need for testing and all the other things that we need. This is how the pilot broke down. It was a 6-week pilot, and kindergarten, they did an iPad. They did kindergarten, first grade, second grade. That actually slid there a little bit. Anyway, they did iPads on different weeks. You can see third grade did a thick Chromebook, Windows device, an iPad, a MacBook Air. Had a week with each one of them. Fourth grade, fifth grade, same thing, alternating weeks. Sixth grade, 6 through 8, the Chromebook didn't fit their model when we looked through their data. And so they were doing the iPad, MacBook Air, and the Windows. That would be a week with each group. Now, high school, since they had 2 devices, one of the requests they had during the discovery part of this is they want to have a little more time with it. It's really hard to give the amount of time that you would want to have with the device, but that is actually, though it shows 3 weeks, that's going to be 2 groups that had a week and a half. Because we had a decision to make, do we have a longer time with a fewer amount of people, or do we have a little bit longer time with a more representative group? And so for the high school, it would have been a week and a half with the Windows and another week and a half with Windows, and then they switched. And the people who participated in this pilot, they came on 2 Saturdays for their Saturday mornings to get instruction on how to use these devices, either from Apple or from Windows. And so they took their job really seriously. We had teachers and students. It was a great time. They got excited about the devices they saw. They were able to go back and do there. Do we have anyone here that actually was in the pilot? So Solomon. So Solomon was one of our students that was actually in the pilot and able to be there. And I thank you for taking the time to do that. Pilot participants, we had 48 teachers. You can read that. We had a lot of representation throughout the entire school system to make sure that we had as much input as we can given what we had. We then did surveys. At the end of every week, or at the end of every period, week and a half for high school, if I had a Windows device, at the end of that week, I was asked questions about that Windows device. How did it work? Did I rank it? Did it do everything I wanted to do? What did I use it for? So we asked that question. Then at the end of the entire pilot, I was then asked to rank them against each other because we don't want them to try to compare before they actually have seen everything. So that was what we did. We asked parents, 6 through 13, we asked students, and we asked teachers. Students were through 6 through 13 were a lot of it. Since the lower grades were more of a classroom-based, it depended on whether the teacher gave it to the classroom or not. But we had feedback all the way from 4th grade and 3rd grade, giving us feedback on how they liked it. And it was really cute responses. And that's in your supplement if you look in there, how they went through that. So I have with us today, I have Mr. Grace from Lakeshore Elementary School, Anita McMillan from Troutman Elementary School, Aaron Wally from North Middle, Stephanie Harris from Lake Norman High School, Solomon Shoemaker from ASIC, and Grace Marshall from South Iredell High School. And they're going to, we're now to the point of what did they want us to do? We did all this work. What was the recommendation? So I'm going to let them, because they did, I just facilitated it. They did a lot of that work. I'm going to have them come up, and they're going to speak to each one of them. And Mr. Grace, you are the first one up. So,
great. Thank you. I'm not going to read all of these responses from the surveys. The K-2 focused on iPads, and I think the biggest thing that we got out of that was they definitely were interested in more devices, did not feel a one-to-one was appropriate for that age level, and also that the laptops are not appropriate for that age level as well. So I know just from walking around the buildings into the classrooms every day, upgraded devices are definitely a need that we have at Lakeshore. So.
The dream for the 3-5 grade level, they would love to go 1-to-1. What the recommendation ended up being was that we go 1-to-2, which would increase, would double the amount of devices in our classrooms. 3 and 4, we would go with the iPad with the keyboard, would meet their needs. But in 5th grade, who currently have 6 MacBooks, we would increase by giving them additional iPads and MacBooks so that they're preparing on for middle school. An advantage of the Apple products with they have a thing called Apple Classroom on the iPads, and it is a management software app that allows the teacher to be able to monitor what the students are doing on their iPads. If necessary, they can lock them in, or they can even shoot out a website if that's where they want their students to be, and that's no additional cost with the iPad product. But they were very happy with the iPads and the MacBooks in 3-5.
Middle school is looking to keep with the Apple MacBooks. Right now, we are comfortable with them. We've got teachers in middle school and instructional coaches and support staff who are Apple Vanguard members as well as Apple Vanguard coaches. We've spent a lot of time training our teachers. Prior, when I was a BLC, we spent a lot of time getting used to technology, and now we're at a point where we're able to use the technology to differentiate instruction more. Students are able to create things a lot faster now that they're more comfortable with what we're using. I had one today show me her book report, which is actually an iMovie, and she was thrilled to take it all apart, like break it down to the basics and show me every little bit because she knew how to do all that creating in there. So she was able to do something different than the other child who just chose to write it because we have the product that does it. We have students that are tech gurus that are used in our classes to help other students and to help teachers and help out in the building. They're already loaded with software that we're comfortable with, and teachers have created many items and things that we use in preview that we send out to students, and they can write right on it, send it back to us. There's no additional training needed to show kids how to highlight words and get a definition immediately. We use it in our special needs classrooms because we're able to have it read aloud. Anything like tests and stuff that we send to them, they're read aloud immediately if they need it. And that's what middle school would like to see.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
What did the majority of students want?
The majority chose the MacBook Air. They had also the other 58% was between 3 other devices. 3? 2. 3. The iPad, 2 other devices between the iPad and the Lenovo ThinkPad. So that was this one was the one that they had the most.
Why do you think that number was 42% versus the teachers?
Versus the teachers. A lot of the students through some of the responses, which are, you gave them a copy of the? Okay, so some of the responses, they really liked the fact that you could take the Lenovo ThinkPad and bend it in half. A lot of their statements were, you can turn it into an iPad, which isn't actually a term that way, like a noun. It's an actual thing, like a product. So that was a lot of that. They liked that you could turn it in half and touch the screen. But as for creating and things like that, it was the MacBook Air where the teachers' responses can show you that that's where they were able to create and do the items they needed. Any other questions?
I had a question.
I had a teacher that said she had an issue with students getting on other websites while she's using the product in the classrooms, and she said, and she'd walk behind them, and she said they'd switch really quickly. Did I understand, Mr. Blattner, to say that there's a way that you can control those products, particularly the MacBook or the iPads, so that's the kids are focused?
The iPads, yes. The laptops are a little bit harder to control. We have other classroom management training that we do to do that. And we try to, as we find things, is when there's a swipe that's on there that you do, and we try to disengage those as we find them as being distracting to the environment. So we try to work with restricting that. But we also don't want to lock these down to be a complete typewriter only. So it's something we work with the teachers and get the information back. And Erin can speak to that.
Yeah. One thing that's really important that we spent a lot of time as blended learning coaches and with the instructional coaches working with was teachers just putting kids in groups and managing the classroom that way. And so now you know to look for the swipe because their hand will go like this really quick. And so the purpose of blended learning and differentiating and personalized learning is just having those small groups so there's still the teacher interaction, but you've got just a small group on a computer. And the best way to set that up, for me in my classroom, is having it where you can see the screens of all the kids. And setting up our expectations, I think, was a big part of the beginning of my year to make sure that they knew, I'm serious, don't you dare. So we did a lot of that. But I think they've done a great job, our tech department, of locking down what they can and keeping it there. And I think a lot of it falls also on teachers facilitating. And
I think one of the problems with the software that you mentioned is where it puts the teacher in a classroom. It puts them sitting at their computer to watch what all of the kids are doing. Instead of being up, talking with students and engaging with them and offering help, you're chained to your computer to see what all those kids are doing instead. So I think changing the mindset of how you approach a classroom is maybe more important than buying software that chains you to your desk.
Right, because I feel like you would be in front of it. Like I know I would be like, okay, gotta watch it. But knowing instead of being active and walking around and seeing what's going on with the students and everything, I think there's a better chance of building that trust with them and having them become responsible.
But that hasn't been a big problem as far as you could tell with your classrooms.
I find it really obvious when a kid is like watching movies or doing things like that because they're like this. And so there's like this dead stare that takes on when they're doing that.
Show this.
Yeah, how was that? Could you show that again?
What's that look
Toward the
again?
camera,
Oh, okay.
Like the mouth open, the eyes blank out.
That's it. That's the look. Okay.
Yep.
That's the look you're looking for. And so I think if you're watching your students, it does become pretty obvious when they're off task. You know, if they're supposed to be working on something, they're typing a mile a minute. They're probably sending emails to their friends and not working on a paper. Like, it's pretty obvious once you watch students when the behaviors are where you want them to be or when they're doing something else.
And I think that's where our coaches come in with us to help us plan better, more engaging lessons and things that they're learning their material and they're engaged in it, and it's something that they want to do because that's what they're doing instead of pretending that a email is a text message.
I'm Stephanie Harris, and I work at Lake Norman High School. I've been having conversations with teachers in my building because they found out I was on this committee, and they were like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't get to say. But we've been having lots of conversations about devices in my building and looking at the data, and most teachers are just now really feeling comfortable with the MacBooks. It took them 4 years to really start with that mindset shift to seeing, oh, here's what I can do with this device. And so I think part of the reason that the data shows that 90% of teachers are really excited about keeping the MacBook is because they're just really now starting to see the potential of what it can do, of moving up in Bloom's taxonomy and moving away from just, I'm going to take this worksheet that I gave kids and now just put it on the computer, to having them create and having them use the Apple TV in the classroom to share their presentations in a snapshot, or having them show their essays, or even taking and creating an iMovie where they're taking a skill that they were using before and imagining it in a different way where they actually have to think outside the box. My students just finished a fallacies project, and one of the things that they had to do was write and direct a commercial where they used logical fallacies, where they went over the top and created these things that wouldn't really work. it required them not only to understand logical fallacies, but to be able to plan their video and to edit it and to direct it and to put all the parts together in a way that allowed them to demonstrate their knowledge. And that's something that I couldn't have imagined 4 years ago in my classroom when we still had those cow carts. And so I think the reason that so many teachers are moving towards wanting to keep the MacBook is because it's kind of opened up to them what they can do with it. And so they don't necessarily see the same thing traditionally through a Windows-based product based on their experiences in the past. And so I think they view it as working better because it's more consistent, and they know they can get on the internet with it, and they know that the things work. And they're starting to build things in these Apple-based products for their students in the classroom. And so it would require training. It would require lots of moving documents and converting them at this point for them to move out of that environment. I think that's really part of the reason why they feel so strongly. They also see the value in the fact that it still works. They've had this device for 4 years. They still can keep a battery charge on it for more than an hour. They still see that the problems that they're having are maybe small scale because they dropped it or they spilled liquid in it or something. They're not having problems with it running and continuing to work on a daily basis. And I think that's a big deal for a teacher who's trying to use it in their classroom, that it works every single day. So, do you have any questions for me?
Mine's still the same. 65% overall would be then the average, 90% teachers. So that's telling me that 30%, 40% of the students didn't want the Mac Air. What did they want?
They liked the ThinkPad. They like the other device that we piloted. I think it offers them flexibility, to be really honest with you. It can work as a tablet, it can work as a computer, and I think they like that flashiness. It seems really cool to them. And so I think it was really interesting when I looked at the data because I saw at the beginning, they kind of shirked down the Mac a little bit, but then when they asked them at the end which one they really liked, most of them still said they would be really happy with the Mac. So I think the idea of this new flashy thing for a lot of students with their underdeveloped brains, they didn't really think it all the way through. And they thought, oh, this is cool and shiny and flashy. Let's go with that. As opposed to which one works best for what I need to do in the classroom every day.
What was the actual percentage of students? Do you have that?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I teach English. I don't teach math, so percentages are not my thing.
And I had a question, too, about, like I know a lot of the colleges use the MacBooks and use the Apple products, and that converts really easily into their college years. But I've also noticed that, like, my son was in a curriculum in college where they preferred them to use the Windows products, like the, have use of Excel and Word and that sort of thing. How is working with the MacBook, with the Apple products, are you able to kind of assimilate those products?
We do have Microsoft Suite for the MacBooks. And so the reality, though, in my opinion, as somebody who's kind of been an early adopter of technology all the way through, is that if you can use something like Excel, you can use the Microsoft version on the MacBook. You can use Sheets. You can use the Google form as well, as long as you know the basics. Most of the time it's just they call it something different, or there's one button that you have to hit different to make it do what you want to do. But if you know one of them, you can figure it out on all of them. And I have found my students to be pretty good at navigating those things, given the opportunity. And I would say a number of schools, maybe not all of them, where there are different circumstances, a lot of kids are using PCs at home. Their parents have a PC, they have a laptop that they use occasionally as well. So they're still getting opportunities, I think, to work in that PC environment as well.
Hi, Solomon and I are here for the student perspective on the MacBooks. And while I wasn't a participant in the pilot trial, I've only had the MacBook for the past 5-6 years. And I think it's so easy to use because I don't understand anything through technology, but I was able to quickly pick it up. And like she mentioned, our parents have PCs, and when I go home and try to use my mom's computer, I don't know how to do anything. And so I think it just goes to show that even though I'm the 18-year-old and I should know what I'm doing, I still think the PC is hard to adapt to. And also, I've learned a lot of new stuff. Like last year, my Spanish project was a 10-minute soap opera, and I had to use my laptop to film it, use, I think, iMovie to edit it, and it was really neat, and I learned a lot of stuff that I think I can apply next year.
And I'm Solomon. Obviously, having it for these few years, we're going to favor it. But as someone who has also worked with PCs and Windows products, I have all of my Microsoft Office certifications. So I know how to use any type of program that Microsoft makes on any type of device. Now, I know the obstacle becomes, how are these students going to learn how to use Microsoft programs such as Word, Excel, and that is a very valid question. But I know for a fact at North High, we actually had all of those Microsoft classes. And as they've already mentioned, several of those are very easily accessible on both devices. I think what really stands out about the Mac is the quality of the product. I did get to pilot the ThinkPad 2-in-1, and while it did serve sufficiently as a student device, I didn't find that the durability and the build quality was that of a Mac. And obviously there's a budget difference between the two, but I think for students to ignite that passion for learning, the opportunities that come with a Mac are endless. And as someone who doesn't have internet at their house or hasn't had internet for the majority of my life, the MacBook is very easy to use, whether Wi-Fi is a possibility or not. Do you guys have any questions for us?
So what did you like most about the ThinkPad?
I did like the 2-in-1. Like our early students, I did like the 2-in-1. I like the fact that you could flip it around. I didn't find the pen very responsive, but some of the applications, but I did love the fact that you could flip it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when the committee got all this data, and you heard the way we came to these recommendations is we went through a decision ranking process, where you can see on the left here on this chart, those are kind of the kind of categories that we looked at, and we ranked them, which is more important, which is less important, and this chart represents kind of how it came out between the devices. The more stars meant it has the least amount of impact. The more yellow stars are, the least amount of impact on the school system. The less number of yellow stars means that there's going to be some change. Like when we look at lesson planning, which is the fourth one down. As you go to different devices, they're like Ms. Harris and Swally had said, they have the products already created, and they have the lesson plans created with this device and everything like that. So it's going to be the easiest transition to continue on. If we move to a Chromebook or even to an iPad for middle school, because they looked at that, or a ThinkPad, it means transitioning some of those things. So it takes some training. There's a cost of that training. It takes time, and it takes time away from their creativity and creating those lessons, just expanding on what they have and kind of recapturing to get what they have currently. And so that's kind of what I'm not going to go through each one of those. That's kind of where this came from. So if you want to know what it was like in that room, this kind of tells where it all landed out, where they felt what was strong, what was weak in each one of the areas. The sources for this recommendation is the knowledge of the people on this task force, which impressed me every time. The PLC surveys of teachers we talked about, the surveys, the end-of-pilot surveys, and the vendor presentations were all data that went into making this decision. Summarize it, we're saying K2, iPads without a keyboard, 1-to-2 ratio. Students 3-4, iPads with the keyboard, 1-to-2 ratio. Students in 5th grade, iPad and MacBook Air, iPads with keyboard and MacBook Air mix, 1-to-2 ratio, half and half with each. 6 through 12 is MacBook Air, 1-to-1 ratio. Now the teachers, Our K-5 teachers have been, they're on a device that's been dying daily on them right now. And so one thing is to get their refreshed into MacBook Air, and having a iPad in their classroom there, they need to have that as well in there. Because one of the comments, if you saw the comment on the slide, was they thought the iPad was great for the students, but they still need a laptop to do their work. And that is still the case at this point. And 6 through 12, the teachers would have a MacBook Air like they do at this point in time.
Are we still going to have the small MacBook Airs for the teachers?
And this, yes, this is the 11-inch MacBook Air in this, yes. This plan, it increases the number of devices in elementary schools, which you know needs to take place. It maintains our 1-to-1, 6 through 12 and blended learning. Apple is a preferred product overall, and we have the infrastructure to support this recommendation within the tech department and also within our policies that we have. We're getting closer to 3 to 5 to the 1-to-1. They'd like to have 1-to-1. They understand we're not there yet, but it gets them a lot closer than they were before. These are two comments that were actually in there, which I think kind of summarize what we were talking about. By not changing, we won't slow down. We can move forward faster. We've had a phrase here in Iredell-Statesville to walk slow to run fast, and we've done our walking. This gives us the chance to now start doing the running. Other considerations that are in this beyond that is that presentation came there. AppleCare Plus, which will provide accidental damage coverage for students, which I'll go over in a second. There's included in this is MacBook Air prep services with the decommissioning of 12,000 devices and the commissioning of 14,000 devices. That's a lot of orchestration and man hours, stuff like that. So this takes some of that, which took us 3 months to do last time with our team, about asset tagging, inventorying them, the image, so when it comes to us, it's ready for our students, and we can work on decommissioning the ones that we have. And the iPad prep services, same thing, getting them tagged, getting them ready, getting them in their cases, so when they come to us, they're ready for the teachers and the students. We have Apple Professional Learning Services to continue our growth. As the products renew and get new, we have that training that we can then pass along and continue our trek. The Apple Professional Services is what it's going to take for my team to make all that other stuff happen as we do that transition to other stuff. It's replicating environments so they can image elsewhere, and it's providing those services. And the other thing that was considered is the consistent increase in residual value with that. Now, AppleCare, this is AppleCare Plus. This is what I was really kind of surprised me when it came in here, and it shocked me, because one of the things that we learned over the last 4 years is the cost of repairs for families, or the fear even of the cost of repairs, is a big stress that is added onto our homes when they sell these devices. And what AppleCare Plus will do is it is now going to take accidental coverage, which some of our parents have been paying extra money for, and it's going to make it part of this. So accidental damage, we're no longer to be collecting bills for damages. Now, we may have some, if they're willful, if they decide to break it in half over their knee, well, that's beyond accidental, and that's also something we need to deal with otherwise. But those things that are happening, where they close their earbuds in the screen and crack the screen or stuff like that, these are things that are no longer to be passed on to the families. It's be something that's going to be part of this. The other part that you may have heard about is power cords. There's a commitment to power cords, and then power cords are covered under this, and then that will not be as an issue that we've had moving forward that we did before. But this, I thought, was really powerful in that.
So IBM doesn't offer that?
They do have that as well. The purchase, we're looking to purchase 13,000. You see these, the MacBook Airs, the iPads, the ones with cases and without key, and the ones with cases without keyboards. This is the main of the products that we're purchasing with this. The way it breaks down with those other costs, the accidental damage for students, that's the warranty and accidental damage in that, so it's not all just accidental damage, but it's a $139 device. The prep services and the iPad prep services, $1.42 and $1.14 per device. And then you have the learning services and the Apple professional services that go on there. So,
Could I get an extra question? These services,
yes.
Ms. White, can we pay that out of capital?
Yes, it's just considered part of the cost of the
You did mention that we got, these are state contract prices, correct?
That I had mentioned that Lenovo was on the state contract for yes.
Yes.
The prices were not.
You said lease. I thought we owned the computers we have now.
We do a 3-year lease to own. So at the end, it's $1 buyout, and so we own them at the end of the 3 years.
Okay, so we do own them.
Yes.
So if we're going to buy them in that respect, did we get bids?
Are we going to
Did we bid this out?
bid for Apple as a sole source vendor?
Bid the whole deal out. I mean,
So if the recommendation were to go with the Windows product, we would have had to gone into a bid process because there are multiple vendors that do sell Windows products, even on state contract. But since the recommendation right now is for Apple, depending on what you guys choose, Apple is a sole source vendor, so that there is no bidding with that. You can only purchase through them.
are we buying directly from the producer, or are we buying through a middle person?
We're buying from Apple.
And that's considered a state contract price.
Yes.
That's what you said.
Yes.
Okay.
They're sole source. Yes.
Right. Let me interrupt you. This was a very controversial issue last time, if you recall. I'm sure you do.
I do.
It was also very controversial during the election process of the new school board. A lot of people had different opinions. It's sort of confusing. We want to be in the 21st century, but yet $13 million? Is there any way we can make it a lower price? Because this is a lot of money. And we're taking it out of what?
Capital.
Yeah. So that means we're going to have to find some money for roofs, right?
Well, the latter part of this, Melissa will be able to go over the dollars and cents that'll be able to answer that more. But I get your point, yes.
And then we really don't know what's going to happen at the legislature with the K-3, correct? So we're going to need money to pull in trailers, right? If the state says, no, you're going to lower the class size. Now, I agree 100% with the fact that elementary needs computers. They need them bad. I did my own survey because it was such a controversial issue, and I started last April. And mine was it wasn't as specific as yours. But over the time, now, when I asked students, it was almost 100% MacBook Air. 100%. I talked to teachers, and I heard the response that they could do as much with the Chrome as they could with the MacBook Air. Even so, in some cases, more. Then I had some teachers say, you just give me a class set, and it would solve a lot of problems. And I can see that a class set would also create problems. It may solve some problems, but it would create problems too. So I'm in a quandary. You're going to have to convince me that we can spend $13 million with a lot of things in the air as we have today, because I'm not convinced that we should, take on that kind of money. And I guarantee you the county commissioners are looking at the way we spend the tax dollars very closely. Okay. And so you have to convince me, and so far you haven't done it.
Okay.
So you will not have my vote at this time. Thank you.
Right. So one of the things that we also had on there is looking at the residual value of the devices, because to that, as we own them, we have the option of selling them at this point in time. So another school system, after 4 years, which is very similar to what we have now, they were able to sell their devices for $250 a piece. Same district, after 2.5 years, we're able to do it $360 a piece. Us, we were able to resell CCTLs after their 4 years for $250 a piece. So you can see that it has, when we say that when we go to sell these, it has held true. Now, I did check our current laptop. If I were to have Lenovo buy it back, they'd buy it back for $193. Best Buy would buy it back for $222 on their own buyback program. And then to give you how that residual holds, I did the same thing for a similar Windows device. It'd be $38 for a Lenovo buyback program, and it'd be $35 for the Best Buy. So it's one of those things that we get money at the end of this when we sell that that really defrays some of that cost. So that that's where that was factored into it as part of the factor, but now we're getting into kind of the dollars and cents which you were asking about. So, Ms. White, you can leave this to me? No, thank you. You can do it.
Now we need to see the checkbook.
Okay. What you have before you here is the cost of the Apple products that the committee is recommending to the board. We did meet with Apple to negotiate this price. Your question is, can we get this any cheaper? We feel like this is the best that we can do. We feel like we have done well at getting them at a very reasonable price. And as we go through the slides, you'll kind of see why I think that. There is 0% interest on this purchase. This is the cost breakdown. How do I do it on this thing? Okay. So if you look at the new lease, and you'll see the number of devices, we're getting almost 3,000 more devices at just about the same cost. You can see the breakdown between secondary schools, elementary schools. The elementary teachers, they were not previously included in either of our two leases. They've had those same laptops for, 6 or 7 years now. So that's the breakdown of the cost by level of schools, and then the elementary teachers are broken out separately. Okay. This is where the money's coming from. So the capital outlay budget, their recurring capital over this 3-year lease span is about $6.6 million. Now, we have been holding back some technology reserve money from the capital budget ever since the initial lease for the one-to-one middle school and high school devices started. So there's $3.2 million available there. Then we have some textbook waiver money that we're going to use. Technology usage fees. We have always intended to use this to help pay for the devices. Part of those fees go towards that. We will take some of the proceeds from selling the old devices to apply towards the cost of the new devices. There's some restart money available, state restart money, because MB Mills put in their plan for some student devices at a little bit of a higher ratio than the other elementary schools. So that's where that money is coming from. And then you'll have some sales tax refund that you'll get as part of this purchase also. Okay, sorry, 2 computers. This is the payment plan structure over the 3 years. So once we sign a lease, if we sign it with Apple, we will make payment on we will make the first payment within 30 to 45 days of the lease being signed. So you'll have a payment this year, and you'll have payments 2018-19, 2019-20. And you can see the cost breakdown. They're not even, they're not charging the same amount from each of your sources over the 3 years. But the total lease payment.
With this amount coming out of capital, we will no longer be putting away any money in capital.
Right. During the term of the lease, we will no longer hold back money. This because we're taking from their reserve, their recurring capital.
So we'll be getting a little behind for the next round.
Well, what I have planned long term is in that 4th year, when we still have the devices and we're not making any payment on them, we're going to set back a larger amount than what we would have been doing.
2.7 million or something. I mean, right. I'm just looking at that, and then all proceeds from that would go back into capital.
The majority of them. You'll see we have just a little bit coming out of local, but probably 90 to 95% of the proceeds will go back to capital once we resell them, yes.
And that's for the next go-around, not
Right. Right.
Mrs. White,
Yes, sir.
I know you've probably answered this question. Sales tax,
Right.
$810,000?
6.75%. Yep.
I didn't think school system had to pay sales tax.
Yes, sir. We have to pay sales tax, and then we apply for a refund for a portion of that sales tax that we pay. Your sales tax is made up of a state portion and a local portion.
Right.
We get the local portion back on a refund basis, but we have to pay it up front initially and then apply for the refund.
Okay.
What did you say about NB Mills Restart Fund?
Okay, so each of our Restart schools submitted a proposal to the district on how they wanted to spend their money, and part of MB Meals' proposal was to get more technology in their school. And so part of the proposal is, I don't know if it's a 1-to-2 ratio in all of their classrooms when the others, what was it? It was more than that maybe. I can't, off the top of my head, remember. Maybe it was just 1-to-2. But part of their application to us was to use the money for some devices.
But
It was
I thought
1-to-2?
Restart,
Okay.
oh my God. I thought Restart money would go to that school, so it seems like NB Mills is getting shortchanged.
Well,
If they're
NB
gonna use their Restart money to pay for computers. If they didn't have that, then they wouldn't have to pay that. I thought the 100, if it's 135 for NB Mills, then that could go to other things that would improve their learning in that school.
If the board does not want to use Restart money to pay for those computers, then we will use local money to pay for those
But you
computers.
see, do you see?
I
am
see where you're coming
asking a
from.
legitimate question?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's just as fair for us to pay the same to them we do to all the other schools.
But you wouldn't be.
Yeah, right.
With,
If they use their
with them
Restart
using
money.
their Restart money.
If it's not for additional ones, if it's the same, yeah.
If they
So
wanted
that's up to you?
one-on-one, that would be,
If they wanted
they could use it, yeah.
yeah.
That's up to you. That is fine.
Where is it? A line that some people keep asking was, we went from what we had in the elementary schools was leasing. And we've put all that together at this particular point because those leases ran out, correct?
Right. So the two leases have ended at similar. We're ready to refresh middle and high and elementary at the same time. So there'll be one lease for all devices instead of two.
Right, correct. So
Yeah. So this, I'm sorry, I'll go back.
in this, I thought it was in here somewhere. The money that, the one that we had at the place, previous leases. So we're going to use that money also to pay, right? What we were paying for the lease for the elementary, we're now going to apply this for the overall?
Right.
part
It's
of
just
it?
rolled into one lease now versus
One
two
lease.
separate leases. Yeah.
And I had a question too about the textbook waiver. I know you're showing 1.4 for this year. Is there a possibility that that could reappear in the following years, or is
Not
this
right
just a
now.
one-time?
The state is changing the way you can use your textbook waiver money.
Okay.
And this is the last year I can use it on technology.
Okay.
So we're selling if this is approved, you're going to sell the computers we have now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so assuming that these computers that we're selling are still functional, because somebody's going to buy them and use them in their schools, correct?
I don't know where the end user will ultimately
Right.
use them, right?
But they would be still a used computer, but somebody would buy it.
Yes, sir.
So if this does pass, I'm going to recommend to the board that we take that money and give it directly to to maintenance. Because instead of using it for something else, because they're the ones is hurting.
Okay.
I don't know if that's possible, but
It's not my recommendation. Capital Outlay did not pay for these first round of computers. They paid a
Right.
little bit. They'll get a little bit of the proceeds. But they did not pay for the vast majority of these computers that we're going to resell. Local current expense is in more need of that money than capital.
But they're paying for the new ones.
So they'll get the proceeds when you sell these new ones. Capital Outlay will.
I know what you're saying,
Yeah.
but that you're like an insurance company. Anyway.
And I had a question too about the computers that are being sold back to Apple.
Not to Apple necessarily.
Okay.
Whomever buys them.
Whoever buys them, okay. Is there an opportunity for graduating seniors? I know we talked about this at one time, that they may be able to purchase their MacBooks.
No, we're not offering that to them right now. We have taken the advice from other school systems who have already gone through the process of reselling their computers, and for the little bit of money that you may get from selling it to your seniors or anybody in the public, the hassle far outweighs the benefits, and they just say it's much easier, more cost effective, you're going to get more return on your dollar if you go through a bid process to sell all of your devices to one end purchaser.
Okay, so it would just be one contract to sell it all, and you're not going to piecemeal it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to make a couple of comments. I guess it's time to do it. There's always, and I know when the school system was going through this for the last one, I was still working for the school system. It was Apple versus PC. Now, I really did a lot of research on that, and there's no doubt in my mind that for a student device, the Apple is by far the better device. Just a lot more durable. The resale is better. I don't worry about the PCs so much. I mean, I have an Apple, and I was a PC guy, and I've got the Excel and all on my Apple. Life goes on. Typically, we have a lot of our programs that use PCs in the training, and I've not seen any problem with our children, at least at the high school level, using the PCs in our training. Example, and I'm from automotive, so I can speak about that. All our automotive stuff's PC, and they use them constantly, and they use their Apples for their device in the classroom, and they work with PCs. So I've not seen any problem going back and forth from Apple and PC. Now, I have talked to Dr. Taylor a lot about this. I think our biggest weakness in our technology is the training of our teachers. I think we, because just like Ms. Bonham said, teachers talk a lot about the lack of proper use of them. I really think when you come and ask for this kind of money, we're going to have to see the bang for our buck. $13 million is a lot. Now, when I compare it to the last lease, we're getting more for our money this time than we got last time, by far. I'm impressed with the fact that we're buying 1,700 more elementary school computers for very little money, which we desperately need. It's a good deal, I think, but it's $13 million. As it was brought up, we don't know what's going to happen on the K-3 class size. That could be $3 million, right, Mr. Johnson? So there's a lot of questions out there. It's not easy for us to sit here, and at least it's not for me, and approve this.
Mr. Page, and to your concern about the K-3 class size and the unknown, I don't want to say the beauty of this, but the fact that a lot of this is coming from capital outlay is not going to impact the local budget as far as K-3 teachers go. It's
going to impact the building of classrooms. That's all capital.
Yes, but fortunately, we do have an increase in our capital money.
We do.
Who knows how long that's going to
I've seen the numbers. Last. Who knows how long it's going to last? I know. I've seen the numbers. I know what we reducing some debt. We definitely are in a lot better place than we were. It's still hard to spend that kind of money. I'm not saying I'm not voting for it. I'm just explaining the board's situation is when we're looking at things that we don't know what's going to go on. I think I'd like to say first that I think the committee did a great job. There was a lot of complaints last time, 4 years ago, that the system just went with what they wanted. They were buying the Cadillac or the Lexus, and that's what they wanted. And I don't think anybody can say that about us this time. I think that you guys did a great job on that, and it brought us a very, very reasonable recommendation. It's something we're going to have to take. I want the public to know we're taking it very seriously, because it is the taxpayer dollars. Board members, do you have any more comments or questions of these people?
I've just got to say the biggest selling point to me, as far as Apple products go, is the maintenance cost. That is just huge. I mean, I had a brand new computer. I had it 1 month before I had a virus pop up on my computer, and I was at the Best Buy. How do I fix this? I know Apple is, that's less likely to happen. But that to me is the biggest thing. A pop-up shows up on your computer. You may have already won $1 million. Some 12-year-old is going to go, oh yeah, and click,
Are you talking about some 65-year-old's going to go click too?
You're right. Yeah. So, that probably is my biggest selling point, and I'm concerned about the capital money. However, our chief financial officer is, I've known her now for almost 8 years. She is very, very conservative, and I don't think she would risk, this if she didn't think it was feasible.
I agree, and I hope people didn't, but it is tough. It's tough to look at this kind of money, but if this is what we've got to do to give our teachers the tools that they need and our students the tools that they need to be successful, then the board has to seriously look at it, and that's our job, to provide what you people need, both teachers and students. So
I'd like to know what the cost of one MacBook Air is.
Okay. This is the educational price that we've negotiated with Apple, and it includes the setup fee. It includes Apple Care Plus. It is $760.42.
And the Chromebook?
I do not know. That information was in their packet. It was in the board packet, so if you access that, I don't have that on me, but in the information there was a link to all of the supporting documentation that was in that Google Drive that was provided, just so we didn't print out probably in excess of 100 pages. We provided all of that electronically for you, but we can get that information for you. I just need internet access.
Well, I think it's a very important question for me to have answers on, because Mr. Page brought up the Lexus. You can buy a Lexus and it will get you from point A to point B. You can buy a Toyota and it will get you from point A to point B. And I just need to know what the difference in the price of the two would be to see if they don't carry us the same way. I heard what was said here, and I won't disagree with that. So I'd like to know what the difference is.
Okay, and we can do that. Like she said, it is in your packet, but she'll pull it out for you. In all fairness, though,
I apologize.
I didn't see it either. I didn't.
It's in the electronic.
There's a link on your memo to the folder that's got all of this information in it, all the supporting documents.
And in all fairness, that price would be an unnegotiated price. I don't know if there would be room on the Chromebook price or not.
Give me an estimate. Can you say if
Honestly,
the MacBook is $760, is the Chromebook $700, $500, $200 approximately?
I mean, I don't want to give you a number off the top of my head because I don't. Yeah. It's not going to be accurate. So we can look on.
Let me come at it from the top of my head, okay? I don't know why it's not in here. If it was in some of our previous information, it was in there.
It's in the information that was provided to you electronically.
We spent a lot of time doing that. And the bottom line was, if I remember correctly, the bottom line was if you bought like you're saying, if you bought a Mac Air, or if you bought a Chromebook, or if you bought that almost goes to the wayside, because it's never it's always a group, and you're buying 12 million, how many are we buying? 13,000 of them, whatever. And that makes a lot of difference there. But those individual figures, the thing that caught my eye at the time when they were doing individual figures, you had the cost of the Lenovo PC and the MacBook within $100 per unit. They were within $100. So at that point, the feeling was, wait a minute, we can, like you say, you can go from point A to point B in Lexus, but you can also go to Toyota. I can get the Lexus for less than $100 more, and it also included services that the others were not really offering.
Well, that's not true. I asked a question about IBM, and he said that it was the same as Apple Care Plus.
They offer it, but it was not the same price. So when they added it all together, the cost was within $100, if I remember correctly.
I think that includes accounting for the residuals, because the residuals on the Apple, the initial cost is more, but the residuals are much greater on the Apple products than they are on the Lenovo products.
Part of the decision-making obviously did factor in price. The upfront price and the residual on the devices, the committee did take all of that into consideration, but they took other things into consideration also, obviously. Right. But we'll make sure we get you some accurate figures, and we'll get that number too.
Well, let me mention one other thing too. I understand, like Mr. Howell says, when you look at the end line down here, and what is that end line? You're spending, how many is it? $14 million? $12 million.
12.8.
$12 million. $13 million.
Almost 13.
You're spending $13 million. You're spending a lot of money. But it's $4 million a year. And ever since I've been on the board, we've played per year. I haven't looked at 13 million, 14 million ever. I've looked at how much is this going to be, and I hate to do it that way, but that's the way we buy cars and houses. We do the same thing. It's $4 million a year, and if you look at the outline that they've done here, that our guru has presented, it's different. She's worked out different ways each year. It's not all from one source each year. She's worked out different ways to pay the $4 million each year. So we're not losing that in any one budget. We're losing that over a period of time, and we're getting what most of our people have said is the very best for the longest term, overlapping where we are, which was, I don't have to go back through a lot of training because I already have this computer. And I know that's maybe to a lot of people a minor point, but to a lot of our professional people, that's a big point. I don't have to go learn anything new, and I've been doing it for 4 years. I have my device. I just have to, he said a minute ago, now I can run with it instead of just walking. All of those, I know those are all, a lot of those are intangibles. And the money does come up. Like Bill said, money does come up. But you're right on the apex of this system. This is something that is going to be carried for a long period of time. And this is the way it's going to be done. Maybe it's not the best, but it is a way to do it, and it's really riding high right now.
I have several other questions I'd like to ask. On the task force committee, why were no parents on that?
Basically, we discussed that. The primary users of the devices are students and teachers. We kind of likened it to when we adopt new textbooks and curriculum. We get that feedback on which textbooks we're going to be utilizing from our teachers that are going to be the ones that are actually utilizing on a daily basis. And we felt that making sure that we were providing a device that was going to meet the needs of our teachers in the classroom and make sure that the students could utilize it and it was going to meet their needs in the classroom was the primary importance to us.
Under the pilot participants, it says parents were invited to participate. How many participated in the pilot?
There were several parents who came that day. I don't know, Dr. Blackner, if you know how many parents attended on those Saturdays, but we did get a few parent surveys back because when we did the surveys during the pilot process, we asked for surveys from the teachers, from the students, as well as the parents. And I believe that information was also provided for you electronically in that Google folder as well.
The other question that I have, I think, is for you, Dr. Taylor. How long have you had the one-on-one in grades 6 through 12?
That process started with a grant that we received in December of 2012, and so since we instituted that grant.
But so for 7 years, can you tell me if technology has improved classroom instruction to the point that it's showing up on test results?
I think it's hard to compare prior to, because during the transition time, this is one of the issues that we found with the data when we were providing that information for the Department of Public Instruction with the grant, is during that transition time we changed standards. So we went from the old standard course of study to the Common Core standard course of study, in which cases we all saw decreases, and those are slowly coming back. Are we at the levels we were prior to that? No. Do I think that all of that is related to and connected to technology? No. I think there are a lot of factors that are embedded in that, but it's really hard to compare because you're not comparing apples to apples, because it's different tests and different standards. Do I think that the technology provides access for our students and to provide opportunities that they did not have previously? Yes, I do.
Another question I have is, what is the present fee that a parent pays for technology?
Grades 5 through 12, where the students take those devices home, it's 6 through 12, where the students take those devices home, it's $50 technology fee. And there is a prorated fee. So if students are on free and reduced lunch, then that fee is adjusted to meet those students' needs. And that is pretty comparable with what other districts around us are using for a technology fee. I do know one other district, we have not charged a technology fee K-5. I do know of another district nearby that does charge a reduced technology fee, and we have not discussed that at this level.
We go with Apple Care Plus, and they are going to take care of the repairs, the accidental repairs. Why charge a fee?
That has been a technology use fee for the access to the technology to help with pay for some additional technicians that we need based on the increased number of devices that are out there for folks. In talking with it, it's kind of an access fee that has been available to assist with some of the device costs, with the infrastructure and things to help support that, such as those technicians. It is separate from the insurance. We have used it to help cover some of our costs, but the insurance, so if a device is damaged, then that is still the responsibility for either the parent to pay, and there was also a separate insurance policy that was offered that parents could opt to purchase.
I'd like to ask one more question before you do. Let me get this on the floor, and then please. With no parents being able to have a voice in the task force, what has been the system's policy or the reason why you don't ask, if it costs $700 to buy a computer that you're going to have for 5 years, why has the system chosen to pay the full amount instead of asking a parent to pay $100 or $200 or even half of it, and then in the end give it to them, as opposed to even worrying about having to bid? I just want to know what has been the thought in the past, please.
Okay, I can answer that a little bit. Our students are not all of our students are going to be able to afford that. Just point blank, they are not going to be able to afford. I can't get all my students to pay $50 a year. And are you not going to give them their computer if they can't pay it? And that's, I think, the main reason behind that is for a fair access to all of our students, no matter their ability to pay. That's my take on that.
So that's certainly a portion of it. Certainly the consistent access and providing that for our students. We would provide textbooks and those materials for them. So if we're providing this device in and of itself. The reason that we don't kind of allow folks to take it when they graduate is when we look at, we're getting our purchase price because we are purchasing at very large scale. So if you took, let's say, a sixth of those devices or a portion of those devices out of service every year because they're going to that graduating senior, then you're going to be including new devices every year that are going to be coming into that. So you're always going to be selling off, having some purchasing new, and then you have different versions of devices that are kind of constantly coming into your system. Sometimes those change over time, sometimes they don't, but it just makes it a little more consistent and manageable to have the same devices that are in the system, especially for our technicians.
And just repeat, please, and my wife just texted me to stop asking questions, so this is
Have your phone turned off. We told you that when you got on here. You can't have your phone turned on.
Did I hear you to say that over the last 5 years, technology has not improved instruction as far as test results go?
I said it would be inconclusive because there were a lot of things that changed over those last 5 years, including the test itself. And so if you look at the statewide, what we saw is when we adopted the Common Core standards and the new tests and the new assessments, we did see a decrease. Now, that came after our technology was implemented. And so I do not think the technology and that decrease in test scores was related to technology because we saw that across the state. What we have been seeing is a slow and steady increase in our test scores over time. There are a lot of factors that I think are attributable to that. The teachers are becoming more familiar with the standards. We're all becoming more familiar with what those expectations are. I think, it's kind of like prior to technology in any classrooms. There's some teachers who take the resources that are provided to them and they utilize those very, very well and they do very good jobs with them. There are other teachers, it takes a little longer to kind of pull them along. I think a couple of our folks, and I think maybe Ms. Harris or Ms. Wiley made the point that our teachers have spent a lot of time over the last couple of years becoming comfortable with the device, because many of them were not using technology previously before we started on this initiative. So now they are becoming much more comfortable with utilizing the device. And so, as Dr. Blattner said, now we can really take that and continue to move forward, whereas if we have to take a step sideways so that they're spending time to learn a different device and to have to transition materials, then we're going to be taking a couple of steps back in some of that process.
Also want to clarify, right before we started this one-to-one, we just got wireless into our schools. So that was a new thing for our schools. So we have done a lot of improvement in technology. The other thing, we got the grant in 2012, but we did not implement the actual devices until a little bit later. We went through a process of trying to decide. So it was 13-14 was the first year that we actually started implementing it. So when you figure that math of how long the technology has been in the classroom, it's been 2 full years, and we're now in our 3rd full year of doing that.
One thing, just a final comment, maybe not. If it's not going to improve instruction, it'd be hard for me to justify $13 million. So somewhere along the line, I hope that you can get all the teachers on board so that they really are using it, and it is helping with instruction and it is helping with kids being able to do better, learn better and to do better on standardized tests.
I think at this point, what she's saying is this official pile of data that we could use to show that is not going to show that because of the changes that the state has done. What I think you would find, and I don't have the data, but I think if you went to the schools and talked to the teachers that are into the use of the devices and the blended learning process and being able to separate a student from the group and give them their own line, I think that has improved. I think everybody who has ever used those devices in their classroom, they have found that it has improved instruction because they know that we lost 3/4 of our teacher assistants, which we'd still love to get back. We have a computer, we have a device that we can send a student to that I can take him to and really bring him up better than if I have to stand there over him when I've got 21 others. So I think we would find, if we talk to the individual teachers, we would find that it has improved. The data at this particular, the official data, might not show it. But I think we would find that we've had a vast improvement in instruction and results with our students with these devices.
Well, and also what Dr. Taylor also said was that, the children are developing skills that are marketable in industry, and it's pertinent. It does give them a little bit of an edge as far as that, just for that
I think
as
there's
well.
just a lot of things that have come together during this time period that I think it's hard to pinpoint. This is the one thing that made a difference. I think there are lots of positive things that have attributed to that.
Well, you can't answer all the if questions either. Heard a long time ago, don't try to answer all those. But, like for example, we all know that when they leave our high schools and they go to a college, they're going to have a computer. And that computer will be the one that college chooses. Might not be Apple at all. It might be a PC, and he's going to have to change. If we use the PC and he goes and he has Apple, he's going to have to change. But the fact that he's used this for 3 or 4 years, like someone just said, it's going to give them an edge to use whichever device it is that they have to use when they go.
I think it's
helps.
Also, as a teacher, really important that we don't quantify success just based on those test scores, because while they are a standard that we have to hold ourselves accountable to, I would argue that the ones for high school English are reading comprehension tests. Can a kid read and comprehend what they're being asked to read? And I teach my kids far more than that every day. We are thinking and digging, and the computers allow that part to happen in a way that maybe they don't prepare them to take a standardized test, but they are allowing them to think more critically and more completely. They're allowing them to read things they wouldn't have access to on a regular basis otherwise, because when we had textbooks, this was the only option. Well, now I can pull from anything, anywhere. I can pull from something that was written yesterday. And so I think when we think about learning and we think about true success for our students, it's not necessarily just that end score that they get on that test. And I don't know that a computer is ever by itself going to raise test scores tremendously. It's the other things that they're doing that are preparing them for success outside of the classroom. And I think in some ways those are more important, because a test like these standardized tests show where they are one day and how they woke up and whether or not they had breakfast and all of these other things that we have no control over as educators. But what I can teach my kids is to look at this news article and talk about whether or not it's credible. And they can't do that without some kind of device in front of them, without running a bunch of copies, or there's some other issues in place. I also think that it's really important that we think about being competitive as a school system. There are issues, and we know that there are, with kids choosing other options for education. And one of the things I think it's really important as we move forward is, how do we stay and keep our kids here, because we know the education they're getting is really good. And I think being mindful about what device we choose is part of that process.
Well, Mr. Kennington said something about parents, and I see each one of y'all. I know 3 of you, but take yourself from Ruby. I know you all work for us in the school system, but there are a lot of parents sitting here. I know 3 of you are parents. What would you do, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Blattner, Ms. McMillan? I know y'all are parents. I don't know the rest of you. Switch roles. You're parents now. We're talking to y'all. Y'all are on this committee. What would you parents do? And you have children in our system.
So I will share with you my daughter's experience this year at East Elementary School, because they have switched to and are implementing a blended learning approach at East Elementary School this year. And so I was asking her that they're using an app called Shobi. And so she has her assignments are assigned to her in Shobi. She has some choice. She's got to get them done within a certain amount of time, but she has some choice in what order she does them and how she does it. So I was asking her the other day, because a lot of times her assignments, I don't get papers home anymore. I go on my app and all of her stuff is there, and I can see the feedback. So I said, how do you like doing your stuff on the computer versus last year when you used to do it paper pencil? And she loves it, because she feels that she has some voice and choice in how she goes about doing those, versus before it was kind of, you go here and you're doing this now. And so she actually really likes it and is very engaged in that process. And as a parent, I love it, because I can pull it up and I can see not only what she's already done, but maybe some assignments that she hasn't done yet that are going to be coming up that we could talk about. So from that perspective, I like it because it gives me access at home to things that I wouldn't have access to that we can kind of discuss and talk about and, as a parent.
And I'm sure some more of you might be parents too. I just thought we'll just switch roles in you right now since you did work on it. So, and I have one. My daughter took it. She was here. Now she's in college, and if she didn't have her computer and had done what we had here in computers, she's in her junior year at Campbell University, and she could not operate with what she didn't know the computer we had before. She could not be in college without a computer. I'm not saying this one here. I just had to buy one, but I'm just saying. And $4 million each year is a lot to invest. But I'm still saying we've got to do something. I'm not sure this is exactly the same one, but we do have to have something because they will not succeed if they go on to college without access to a computer that they can use and learn.
And I have 3.
You have
6, 8, and 11 right now. Grade. And what I have seen, because I've been obviously in both worlds and everything like that, they're able to spend more time doing the creative, doing what they want to express or what they want to do, and less trying to find things to do that. So they're not trying to find a program to put this together. They're not trying to find this and this. The programs are there. It's kind of a whole ecosystem. So they sit down and they're working on what the teacher wants them to be thinking about, what they want to be processing, deeper thinking, and not saying, okay, I want to do a movie. Do I want to use Vegas, or do I need to go over here to this one, or what do I want to do? Because it's there. They have the tools there, and it makes it easy for them to just get down to work and do what they need to do. So that's been my experience as a parent with seeing these products in our home.
And they probably...
My stepdaughters live in Ohio, and they are fully online school. And when they have to create things, the school provided them with some kind of PC, laptop, and they have to create videos and send them in and stuff like that, and they hate it. But when they're here on their breaks or like during summer, stuff like that, we've set up the MacBook, and it takes them a second to do some of those assignments over Christmas break. They just both of them finished one. One is 6th grade, the other is 11th grade, and they were able to finish like that because they knew just from having an iPhone, they knew what to do on the MacBook to get that stuff done and sent to them. And they were just thinking, this is going to be so much easier when we start the new semester.
I really wanted to like Lenovo better. When I went into this, I really felt like I was trying really hard to be mindful and not letting my like of the MacBook take over my opinion. And I thought it had some really cool features. I really liked that it could be, a touch screen where they could annotate on it and they could do these things on it, maybe that the Mac doesn't. But when I sat down and we looked at all of the data, we looked at the costs, we looked at the results from the surveys, we looked at our own experiences. To me, based on everything that we put it together, the MacBook was the better choice all the way around. And that was kind of against what I thought I was going to feel like when I went in here, because it was like, oh, we're definitely going to go with the Mac. And that's what everybody was saying when I was asked to join this committee. Well, they're just going to roll through this and go with the Mac. But that wasn't my experience, because I went into it really wanting to like the other one more, but I didn't.
Let me say there too, and she did that too. She and one other guy, I don't think he's here, but the other guy that I'm thinking about, they ask all the little questions, all the little sideline questions under everything else, all over everywhere, all the questions that needed to be asked, they asked and they answered them, and they came out well. Let me address one other thing while I'm here. Yeah, I understand exactly when we take away from one thing and put it on another. I hate it. I mean, Dr. Miller and I have talked for 100 years now since I've been on the board. That's how long I've been on the board. And I hate to take anything away from capital. I hate that because we've been behind on capital forever. And the way we're doing it, and if we take away from it, we're going to spin our wheels even more. But it's an entire system. And these are the funds we have. If this were utopia, what we would do is that we say we need $4 million a year for the computers, for the devices, and the county commissioners pay that. Now, that would be nice. But that's not happening. That's not happening.
Is that a motion?
If we're going to do that, I want to add a few other things, too, that they could cover.
Okay.
At least that. But that's not happening. So looking at it as an entire system and $4 million instead of the $13 million, then we're at a point now in which, and if you go throughout the state, let me tell you, when you go throughout the state and you talk to these other systems, and they're not using any devices yet, that's how far behind they are. And over here, they're talking about digital learning, and over here, they don't have any digital anything. So this is where we are, and this is what we feel like we need to maintain to establish for our students.
I'd like to thank the committee for it's unbelievable the amount of time that you folks spent in what you did, and I'd like to say thank you for your efforts. And for me, if we instituted this in elementary and middle school, and we didn't institute it in high school, we'd still have computers in high school, correct? These computers would not go away. Every high school student would still have their Apple, right?
If we don't sell the ones that we have?
No, if we decide to institute this slower, instead of 13 million, can we just, what I'm asking is, why don't we just go elementary and middle school, because the need is in elementary for sure, middle school. So high school would they have computers?
If we don't sell the ones that we have, they would have computers that are 4 or 5 years old now.
That's true. They still work, though, don't they?
They still work. The residual, the longer you keep them, the residual will go down, obviously.
Yes,
obviously.
ma'am.
Part of this per device price is based on the
Quantity that we're purchasing.
So there are additional reductions and additional quantity discounts
Right.
that are based on that quantity that's purchased.
But it'd still be less than 13 million.
But they're also, I would say they're not going to last much longer.
Right.
There are going to start to have more issues. There's going to be more money going in on the other end to make repairs, to fix things when things go out, because computers are consumable. And so my question would be, and I obviously don't know enough about that, is at what point is that going to be a loss because we're spending more on the other end to repair and replace the ones that just died?
Would it have to be kept separate also if K-8 had the AppleCare Plus and then
That would be, yep. We don't have to buy AppleCare Plus, but yeah, if we did, and that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, I'm trying to get you computers in at least elementary and middle school.
Okay.
If this board doesn't vote for this plan, then you got to come up with something else.
Correct.
Now, speaking of the...
I don't want to cut you say. I want to say one more thing. I don't want to cut you off. I know everyone's wanting to be done and move on with this, but I will say that I really think that our county commissioners support what we're doing. I think that they want to work with us to make this happen. I think we are in a great spot right now to where we are increasing our capital funding substantially year over year. I know we have needs all throughout the school systems, buildings for sure, but our students need to come first ultimately. And I think the county would be pleased that we are able to use capital outlay money and free up our local current expense to put teachers in classrooms, pay supplements, maintain buildings with our maintenance staff. They are the ones that are encouraging us to take advantage of the glut of capital money that we have right now to help with our technology needs. We are really in a good place right now to be able to do this. If we didn't have all this excess capital money, I don't know what we'd be talking about right now, but I don't know that we'd be talking about this option.
Well,
Actually, Ms. Wyke, I did talk to county commissioners today, and they were concerned about the maintenance of our building rather than buying $13 million in computers.
They will always
be.
Yep.
Because they know that it costs a lot of money, more than $13 million to build buildings.
And
so,
we know that we will always, forever and always be behind on maintaining buildings. Always.
Well, I'm going to try to close us down on this subject. Now, we'll say I don't think we have a glut of money in capital. We need about $60 million.
Always need more in capital.
We need about $60 million to catch up to where we're at.
Yep.
Dr. Miller, you've seen these numbers. They're talking about $1 million this coming year and $2.8 million in the next 2 years. Is that doable, sir?
Absolutely. It's doable. As was mentioned here, it's a balancing act, and we have to balance our needs with what's best for the students.
Okay, thank you. It's durable. It's doable.
Doable.
Okay, thank you. Board, we will have to vote on this by February. We need to take this to the county commissioners in February because they've got to approve the lease. I would like to just let this sit out here and let's get some public feedback. What's the board's desire?
Have to do it at the February meeting.
What do y'all vote in February?
Fine.
Mr. Kenny, is that good with you?
Doable for me.
Did you want to vote tonight, I guess is what I'm saying.
Pass tonight, February's the next shot, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to hear some. I didn't want to vote tonight. In other words, do we need? But it's not up to me. It's up to the board.
You know where I am, because
You want? Yes.
you
Yes.
know,
And I will say, Max pretty much told me the same thing. Max was comfortable with he thought the committee did an excellent job, and he was comfortable with this. So that's where Max is at.
And Mr. Page, if you're not going to vote on it at your board session, I do have it marked as
Okay.
a voting item, so we need to
All
make
right.
that noted.
I want the desire of the board. Who wants to vote on it tonight, I guess?
I'd vote on it tonight.
Okay. Bill?
No.
No.
Nope.
I don't care.
I could, but I can wait as well.
All right, we'll look at voting on this in February. Then if there's some more, you're going to get the board individual calls. Board members, if there's any more questions, please feel free to contact these people. And then we can have, if we need more information presented, we can do that in the calendar in February. A very short presentation.
What's that word?
Yeah. Is the board with that? Thank y'all very much. Thank you for all your hard work. Tremendous amount of work. We really appreciate it. And we do know that you're thinking about our children. So thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chairman, according to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, I make a motion that the board enter into a closed session to discuss personnel matters
I think it's all, isn't it? That's all
and to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
Got a motion second. The board to go into closed session. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Board is now in closed session.